So then, again, big thank to Atheneum for helping us making this happen.
Mark of Atheneum is present.
Representing. Big thank to Mariska, of course, for joining the team and also giving an interesting presentation. And of course, big thank to Ricarda for traveling all the way and being with us.
It's my first visit to the Netherlands.
Which is, and you get to see Amsterdam and Utrecht also.
Did you find the street in Amsterdam already?
Not yet.
It's going to be Utrecht, of course, huh?
But that's what I found it quite inspiring also in your presentation, was the fact that apart from the fact that the city that you choose, it's not predefined. It just happens as you go along and how you connect with the locals and what you could finally discover there. But it's also, it doesn't follow the norms of something that could be potentially attractive, or it's not an easy case. You were referring also to Leipzig, for example, and you were saying that what inspired you to tap on the street was the fact that it was very dark and very difficult issue, to take upon. And yeah, it would be nice to.
Well, I think, or the best way that I can also respond to this, I think we're not interested, and maybe that's the usual assumption you see, like a magazine these days going to different places, that's a travel guide. We're not interested in selling the place. It's a literary magazine, and we're interested in telling the stories, and we're choosing a street to do that. So in a way, that's kind of our red thin line, how we connect and everything. But since we're choosing a street all the time where life is happening, we're also embracing the beauty and the ugly, because life also has different layers, and it can be sometimes nice and it can be sometimes also not so nice. So you'll see that, and maybe, I don't know, we've had sometimes feedback, also the Rome issue is actually using big problems of the city and the country to actually imagine a future, and most of the local contributors are talking about how Rome could be or should be, and even like this little performance piece that I just showcased is in a way a desire or a wish from somebody, in a playful way, like, okay, let's turn this into water, let's like refresh our city. And where am I going? So we're not trying to sell the place.
Exactly.
And sometimes people, maybe pick it up and they're from Rome and they're very proud, and then they read this and they're not happy with this. I mean, that can also be the case, but that's, I guess, they're not our target group, and that's more than fine.
But moving a bit more into this notion of what is actually your purpose in doing that, and I think you answered it in so many ways. But I find it also kind of interesting through reading between the lines of what you said, that somehow your presence within a specific area has somehow a snowball effect, which can take any direction. It can be a very subtle in a sense and quite pleasing kind of process, but it can also be like a process where criticality comes upon, and the city becomes a starting point to start critically look at the whole nation. And I think that's what we're also addressing with Rome, in a sense also the same thing inside the issue, that somehow the street at the first point becomes invites people, your team invites people to look at the city with a new eye, and then that new eye starts up opening fires about how the Rome is addressing heritage in terms of urban planning and so forth. And I think for us also as Expodium, as now making the Netherlands, it seemed quite an interesting thing, since we are in a location that has a great history and has become somehow a vague zone. And of course there are plans of the city to revitalize the area. There are investors that are are coming to contribute in that sense. But it seems that somehow, just by physically being there, you start challenging people to get reintroduced. So we create a new relationship with the location they occupy.
I mean, this is why I also mentioned, I think it's very crucial that we're not just there, we just don't show up for like 5 days and then we leave again, but we establish a relationship with the people, and time is limited, so, you know, like 8 weeks is kind of the maximum that we can do, but in a way it's already enough to start kind of a conversation, also maybe to start some sort of trust with the people that they want to share, you know, sometimes also, yeah, not the easiest stories, or... and I think, you know, in a way this is like why I started it, and I understand when we go now, for example, to Athens and we team up there with the contributors, and they sometimes thank us, you know, they're like, oh, thank you now, like I haven't been to this street in, I don't know, 15 years, and thank you for also making me want to go there again. Also, you know, this like Rome, incredible, exhausting, big transit street in the middle of the center. You wouldn't really spend there your day, but we of course invite them again to go there, and then they find out more about themselves and about the city and their surrounding. And it was the same thing for me in Berlin. You know, this, I mean, in a way, this was kind of why I started doing this, because I was in a way faced, okay, I have to now start something here, and I have to find a way sooner than later to appreciate my hometown or to feel okay with it. And I could have maybe also, I mean, yeah, this is why I also chose a street where I grew up and where I had so many memories in a way with, or I knew myself, I don't know, when I was like younger, so it was kind of interesting for me to go there again and to just confront myself with the past, present, and the future. So.
I had this question written down, which I've been partially answered, is does its issue go beyond the geographies it addresses to? And in a sense, can you perceive Flaneur magazine as a tool? And if it's a tool for something, what is that purpose?
I think what I really enjoy about this project is also that nothing has been clear at all from the start, and it's also now that we're in our second year, now we're realizing even for ourselves what it does. And for me, it's now this very interesting experience that usually when you go to a new city, you know, and you're being the tourist, you know, you write down your 20 places to go to, so, you know, you're like from A to B to C, and then you go back and you don't really get a real sense of the city. But if you start diving into a city by this extremely limited, you know, how do you call it, approach or choice, you know, where you say, okay, well, I'm going to probably spend most of my time on one street, I'm going to be walking this up and down for I don't know how many times. It's, I think you get so much more of the city than you ever would. So it's, I don't know if I would call it like a new way of traveling, but it's yeah, it's a different, I think, approach when you go somewhere.
It's kind of research very much related to ethics, because
Mm-hmm.
you are kind of grounding yourself,
Yeah.
and you are persisting to stay on that one spot,
Mm-hmm.
which I find very interesting because it's also at the same time a critical tool.
Yeah,
Very much critical tool, not only about magazine commercialization,
yeah.
but it's also a critical tool about the whole society or way of living.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has time.
Yeah.
Nobody has the money or the time to produce such a magazine, which I find actually quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
The second question is obvious, coming back to commercialism.
Yeah.
How the hell did you pull it off?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first one I financed really by advertisement, and then, for example, this is also where even I think the publishing side is very much similar to the concept that sometimes I also just wait around for something to happen, and this is when the Goethe Institute from Montreal calls you up one day and they're like, do you want to do your third issue in Montreal? And you're like, Yes.
That's
So
brilliant. Okay.
And then you go there. So of course now it needs a bit of more planning and structure, but I'm trying to keep it as loose as possible to not become so commercialized, because I mean I'm trying to build maybe structure not for the reader to see that it gets a bit commercialized, but when it comes to the making of it, so the editing and the design part,
So
I'm
you're
always
just professionalizing your practice.
yeah, and in a way we can also see that. I mean, it's not anymore. If you compare the different issues, you can still see the difference. So the first one is so incredible, raw and so pure, and you really see that's all over the place. And of course, we're trying to, from issue to issue, we're also getting, I think, we're trusting also ourselves more. We're not anymore like, oh my God, we're going to Athens. What are we going to do? You know, we have this kind of now, it's going to be okay modus. So, and I think you'll see that in the issues, that they also are getting maybe more accessible for the readers, but not in a very like usual accessible way. It will always be weird.
This way of working, which is, as you said, it's loose and it's fluid and it's intuitive and it works on levels of trust. I mean, it is applied in flaneur, and it has like a very solid result and a very successful one, and you've seen it. I was wondering if it's something that seeing the results of it and trusting it, would you possibly suggest it also as a tool, as a different way of working together and existing as a community, as an office, as a company, as a collective of artists and so forth. This lucid way, which it's not a chaotic way, it's a very organized chaos, I think. Would it be something that you think we should, as a community or as citizens, as a society, move more towards through, or maybe try to explore a bit more?
I mean, I think from the beginning we always communicated. We don't really want to give this impression where we're now the teachers of something. I mean, I also think that everybody is a flaneur, or whatever this term even means, because everybody of us walks, and maybe just some pay more attention to what it does to yourself, and it doesn't mean that the other person who doesn't is, I don't know, like not a good walker, or I don't know. I always have this kind of like problem, or it's very thin line. Yeah, we're not like an educational magazine. We're just, I guess,
Is it
I don't
like
know.
an invitation to
And
could approach the world, or special streets? So
and it's definitely, because for me it was very clear in the beginning, but that was also maybe like a different kind of struggle, in this kind of like creative scene where, like the photographer is also a writer today and a movie maker. It's not just anymore like one profession, and everything is getting so interdisciplinary. But maybe also even embracing that and using the street as just this gray asphalt where you can do whatever with it. And this is why we're also open to mix with different mediums. And I mean, we're now also thinking now, okay, what do we do besides the magazine? And there's of course a big potential also in tapping into maybe, I don't know, doing programs with this. But I think we just also have to find the right way where, it's not like sign up for the Flaneur magazine course and tomorrow we're going to, I don't know, Champs-Élysées in Paris, and I don't know. So it's still like a process, and so far it has been evolving very naturally, and this is why I try to now observe what just also feels right and what matches what we're doing. So
But you said you were invited for Montreal, and how did that work for Athens then?
Well, Athens worked I believe in signs and encounters. Well, and after we did Rome, I mean, we have a wish list of cities and streets that never ends, I think. But Athens, I was at just this event in Berlin, and I was standing alone, and then there was this like older man standing alone. And then we started talking, and it was kind of in the phase of now deciding for a new city. And then he introduced himself as the PR, he does the PR for the Greek embassy in Berlin. And I told him a bit about our magazine, and then he said, well, you should definitely go to Athens, this is what we need. And it was, of course, in the midst of Greece going through.
So that's what you mean with
and then I was like, oh, okay. And he was very inviting, and he was, and especially Rome was a very tough one for us. It wasn't accessible at all, and also the production side was very just difficult in that you then kind of sense this invitation or people wanting you to go there. And he said, I know you're like a small project, but this is exactly what we even need, that people from abroad go there and just do something. And then, I don't know, we said, okay, let's go to Athens. So.
Nikos, what is Expodium? Are you going to go to? And then you should be flammeuring, or is this term, in Athens for at least a few.
Well, somebody got us first, apparently. Yeah, for me, I think I still need to.
Because it's Greek.
Yeah, I'm Greek, so I lived in Athens.
Well, to the launch, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what we.
And by the way, you're already getting a special thanks because the translation is working.
Ah, yeah, fantastic. Right, you found the translator.
Yeah.
But I think it's looking your own city through new eyes. Yeah. It's a very tough process, and it took you New York to travel to New York to come back and see it. I didn't go that far yet, so especially also with
Amsterdam, right?
Exactly. Well, it's not that far as like New York in relation
what's the distance? That doesn't matter at all.
No, but I think the process of the city of Athens transitioning constantly, and I mean, all cities undergo changes, and all cities change in a kind of like logic rhythm. What is happening to Athens, I think it's a far more speed up process in all of its magnitude, which is very difficult for somebody outside to respond. So carrying the history of being an Athenian, let's say, returning back, I can to do something there. I cannot easily devote only eight weeks to do it, because I need to go through the process of, re-establishing a new relation.
Well, yeah, I totally agree, because Berlin, it took me 23 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you get asked the question what do you give back? Because in a way, you go to a city, whatever how you. I'm interested in that as well, how you select the cities, by the way, but it's another question. But and you go and observe, and you integrate, let's say, and you try to build up a network of people in the street, being part of a community. But what happens after you go back and you have your sort of finished product? It has been tapped on a bit already, there's maybe some feedback you got that people were interested, hey man, you opened my eyes or whatever. But is that it?
No, I mean, one thing that is very important for us, so we always do, or once the issue is published, we don't only present it in our Berlin kind of scene, but we'll always go back and we'll have the launch event on the street and with the people, and this is also way more beautiful than just being in Berlin and seeing the same faces, but actually seeing the neighbors and everybody coming together and seeing their emotions, because they just all of a sudden have kind of this thing about their thing, and that's always very, very beautiful. And even now, after 2 years, we're launching now, or we're republishing the first issue, which was sold out very fast. And we had on the street, there was this one slide, there's this man who has a perfume shop. And we've been staying in touch with him since those 2 years, and now we just thought, okay, we're doing the relaunch, we're now creating with him like a little perfume, you know. So we'll always have. It's not that we're now tapping into merchandise product, but it makes also sense. And he like, you know, created a perfume how he smells the street.
Yeah.
So it's like this little thing, and it's like, you know, we'll never know in what ways we'll maybe return, but we're still very close. And then like the cover guy from the Montreal issue, who's this barber, he came visiting last year, and we were walking down with him the Kurfürstendamm in Berlin.
Yeah.
So it's because it gets very, very emotional, and especially also for the editors who are there for 8 weeks. I mean, in Athens, you know, you have tears, and it was so yeah, it's kind of, and we're in touch with most of the people, and I actually have so from Montreal there was one contributor, and she gave me on my I have to tell you, I really didn't plan it.
Okay, well,
but she gave me when I left Montreal this kind of like angel, and I always carry it with me. So that was a year ago. So I don't know. It's like you travel also really with the cities, to the different
The
cities.
experiences also stay with you.
Yeah. It's very, and of course you get also influenced by it. And it's I wouldn't say that you can arrive to a new city with like, you know, you have this blank canvas. For example, Rome, because it was so overwhelming and so hectic, we already had this sense of, or a longing for a more, I think, calmer street, or, you know, Athens, maybe diving into like a more. But we found now, like, we ended up on a pedestrian street also for the first time, which is all about, you know, local neighborhood, and which isn't anonymous at all. You see like one person 10 times a day, you know, and that wasn't the case in Rome. And I think, you know, because you can't block it out, especially when you go from those places and you dive into them. So in a way, that's also really, I think, a beautiful aspect that we're now realizing as more as we continue. You know, that of course, in a way, Montreal is maybe somehow even influencing us in Athens somehow, or connecting us. You know, even if it's that I'm only carrying this like angel with me.
I'm sure it's more than that, but
why did you choose? Do you choose 8 weeks? Because I can imagine that like building up relations, let's say, can also take 3 months. So like, what would your magazine look like if you would focus on a street for like half a year?
Well, then it would be very uncommercial.
Well, you are on commercial already, or independent, let's say.
Yeah, we're independent, but in a way, you know, we're also doing this, or the others are doing this on a freelance basis, so we can't just be like, okay, 6 months, we're living in Athens. So 8 weeks we're on site, and then we go back, and then it's 1 to 2 months putting everything together. So in a way, it's really like 4 months is the production time for one issue, but 8 weeks we figured out is kind of a good amount to do this.
And I visited the Athenaeum presentation, of course. And you said like the question was asked, final question, like where will you be in 5 years?
Oh yeah, and I said I
but like talking about this, like, you know, you said like the production period of one magazine is 4 months, meaning that you do 3 a year. 2. Okay. Yeah. There's 12 months in a year.
That's correct. Well, we publish twice a year. It's a biannual magazine. So Rome came out in March, and the next one will be out in September.
So, you know, in 5 years you have 10 extra magazines, or not exactly?
I don't know. Let's see.
But again, like, also to what Bart was referring, also to the time that you spend there and so forth. What I found interesting, and maybe it's good to also mention, is that you don't really stay to the street that you're investigating.
Well, I mean, there are 2 reasons for that. One reason is that because we're not planning the street before we go, so, you know, we might rent a place which can be 40 minutes away, which can be like 5 minutes away. We'll never know about that, but then it's very important also for us to, I think, stay sane. And to withdraw ourselves from all of those experiences and encounters, and especially the editors who are there all the time, you know, they need this kind of, okay, what did we just see, who did we talk to, and you can't do that when you live and stay there. So, and Athens in a way really underlined this, because we it was very hard for us to withdraw ourselves because it was probably the most emotional issue we did so far, because we connected with the people in a very deep way, and it was also the first time that they didn't even start writing on production on site. So usually we already start to maybe produce some work, but we just couldn't because it was such an overload, and they were saying we need to distance ourselves. We need to go back to Berlin and even think of those everybody telling a different story. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do it. I leave it.
A lot of mythological retelling.
We're enduring this for the last
culture.
8 years already.
Indeed. I was wondering if there's any questions also from you guys, both to Ricarda and to Mariska, if there's something that you're interested in asking. Because I have a final question for both of you. And it's
You're not waiting their answer, no?
No, that's why no. But I don't want to. I just want to keep it for last. That's fine.
Well,
So,
it's not really a question. It's more of a remark. What with both of your works I find really interesting is that it is very specific in time and specific in the person. Like especially with the interviews or with the stories you tell about the people or the talk you have with one person on a specific walk. It's one moment in space and time, yet both of you produce something that is at the same time universal. And for example, the magazine can be thank you, in I don't know, 2-3 years or 10 years, and it's still sort of actual because there is personal stories which are at the same time universal stories, and the map you can. Whenever you want to walk it, you can do it. And I find this a very interesting thing that it is at the same time a very personal experience the person who's consuming your work goes through, and at the same time it is something that's never gonna work out in a way. And I find it's really beautiful.
Well, maybe if I can comment on that a little bit. For me, especially with this Sebald walk, where he writes about being at the Korpon at the Hofvijver, and then he was sitting on this bench, and then I also sat there, and I just thought, maybe I'm sitting in the exact same space as he is, but then you think, as a person, you have such an individual, how do you say that, experience of life. But then when I sat there, I just realized hundreds, millions of people already sat here. This is not an individual experience at all. This is just a human experience that all of us have in some way or another. And we all experience the exact same things. We all experience the exact same emotions, breakups, people who pass in your family. I mean, this is all a universal human experience. But then for me, it was such a, well, not a shock, but such a realization that this is not just my own. It's so much bigger than that, and that really opened up so much for me. So,
but I think it comes from a very personal experience in the first place. So that makes it very powerful. When you have this personal experience, and then it can be a universal one.
Yeah, it became very profound.
Yes.
The translation.
Yeah.
Yep. I find that also in the abstraction of your mapping and your sketches and so forth. It's a very selective process, and it's as like in the case of Flaneur, in a completely different manner, it is a translation process. And that's why I was very keen on when you referred to somebody asking you if they can use this map, to navigate. As much as like Flaneur is not a branding magazine, but you can take it and go to a city. I think in the same way, your maps are also not, a directive kind of way.
Maps, as we know them.
Yeah.
Well, we're not making it for other people, I think.
Yeah, it's very personal work, and it's also maybe that's the same for you. It's almost like a way to make sense of things, of your surroundings. And then that's also especially why I like this Rebecca Sonnet's quote on, if you don't go to the parts or to the places that scare you, then they will always remain scary. Yeah. And then the less people that go there, or the less you go there, the more scary it becomes. And then once you do go to the places that scare you, it actually opens up so much.
Yeah, it did.
That's also about this place, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you are in the city, you don't really know this place, I guess. I do know it because I studied here for 4 years. But at first, when I came, I was like, where are they taking me?
Yeah.
Like, there is no supermarket, there is no nothing, you know? Like, and then you walk around and then you experience, oh, there's a beautiful river, I can go and have a lunch. And so the unknown is very scary.
Well, yeah, and also leaving your comfort zone. And
yeah,
of
exactly.
course, you know, people tend to, especially these days, I think, you know, despite everything, what's happening in the world, I think it's also a very natural human feeling to just stay in your comfort zone, you know, to orientate yourself and
changes.
but and I think in the long run, as you just said, that actually does the contrary, you know, to yourself. You don't stay sane, you just stay, I don't know.
And it's so funny that you just said that, because when Nikos invited me to come here for the first time and he said, yeah, maybe you can walk in the area and do your mapping, I was like, okay, let's do this. And then I got there and I was like, where? What is this? Am I supposed to do it? Am I supposed to walk here? But then this Tuesday we went out with the students here, and then this is such an industrial zone. And then everyone came back with such a human story. I mean, we met this pigeon guy who was at near the train wheels, who just has these pigeons for like 20 years. And he says, yeah, these are my children, this is my life. Then he had one pigeon pigeons that were two months older than his oldest daughter, who is 18. And then you just have this conversation with this man, and then a place really starts to live for you in that way.
And you wouldn't expect it in a place like
not
this.
at all.
And that's like those surprises and beautiful moments you experience. Also, I think with you in the streets.
But this is in a way why, you know, of course, by the end of the day, we have to choose a street, and the street then just stands also for like a bigger theme, you know. With the Rome, I think it's more about, you know, future. With Leipzig, it was also more about looking actually into the past. But this is why we're always saying it doesn't matter which street we choose, you know. I mean, it's just then kind of, okay, we have an intuitive moment and then we go for it, but it's not like, Kantstraße in Berlin is so much more interesting than the parallel street, you know. That's but of course people sometimes think like that.
Sorry guys, I need to leave. I have a car.
Yes.
Time limit. Green wheels, you know. Okay, thank you. It's lovely to meet you both.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us.
Ciao, ciao.
I think
HB.
we'll be in contact.
I actually have one question.
Yeah.
To both of you. So, both of you have some material which is or a starting point or a translation of a moment experience. And as I'm doing moments myself, and I start with a moment, and then I'm sort of looking at this fluent situation, and then it's gone, and then I have this feeling of, okay, I need to sort of catch it. I'm wondering, how do you feel about it, this having something very personal and moment-based, which is sort of which will always remain as a thought within you, but then also to have this urge to give it back to the outside world, but at the same time not to make it something it is not. So not just to represent it or to make it, you know, fancy. And because I also often have the problem, if I start printing something out, then you start to think of the design, and then you think maybe this typeface makes it look more chic, and then in the end you feel like there is this huge gap between this very small, unique moment and this representation which wants to be something it is maybe not anymore.
Well, I mean, we try to, you know, with this concept that we kind of wrote as like this framework where we say, you know, this is a subjective approach, and this could be to kind of already give an excuse to not meet the, I don't know, this like representational aspect. And this is why also the design is always actually embracing also or actually being unbeautiful design. The designers always say that, and I think that's very, very important. And they're not afraid to go there, and I also let them go there. So, yeah, I think it really just depends as how you, what do you want to do. And of course, it's also for us in a way this kind of thin line, because we are a commercial product in a way. You want to sell this, and how do you attract people? But I think that our target group, or whatever you do, you just have to find the people who also talk your language. I don't know, it's difficult, but I know what you mean. I don't know if that was any kind of answer that I wanted to have.
Well, for me, especially how I made these maps, it was very, very basic. It was just, for me, how I approach it is by reading and then writing and walking, obviously, and then also drawing. And these drawings are just really just a line drawing that I just throw out there. And then I think that is my best work. If I try to really focus, okay, I'm going to make this now, it never happens, and then I just do this, and then I think I can never duplicate it again. And then with this mapping, I mean, I just need to stay really close to that, how do you say that, just immediate or directness, and the same is with writing. I don't like to write on typing, I just like to write by hand, and then that way I can externalize it better, I feel. So I just keep it really, really, it's the action is really direct, and that's in writing and in drawing. And then even when I'm thinking of writing, maybe you also write, then it's gone. This sentence is gone. I'm like, there's also a bit of frustration there. But yeah, for me it's just a direct sort of externalization of a, And if I try to give it a lot of attention, or maybe not attention is not a good word, but then it becomes so super forced for me, and then it never is what I want it to be. So yeah, maybe just keep it super close. Mm-hmm. That's what I would do.
The way I look at it is, you have the experience. This is one thing. Doing the thing is having the experience, walking, all the thoughts that come into your mind. And there's the second part, and that's creating something afterwards. In your case, for instance, the maps or the journal, a magazine. And that's another reality, and it's connected, but it's not the same thing. So
no, it's never the same
thing.
It's
nice to read a magazine, but also I like to read maps in general. I'm very intrigued by maps because it's also a kind of way of walking. Just so I think they're connected, but they're separate also. They have their own identity, and the stronger the identity is, the more it's interesting to read or look at it.
And maybe it's also impossible to really depict it in the way that you've experienced it. It's really, it can never be close. Like the sound piece I put on, it doesn't even compare to what I experienced there, but it's still a representation of it. So I think maybe it's impossible to really depict, especially when it's so personal or so.
But I think that there's so many different means of bringing your experience out there, and I think that's what this series of also like talks and presentations aims for. On one level, to motivate people to actually go ahead and do it, and find the values of grounding themselves within the place they walk upon. Adopt a certain awareness and possibly criticality. That's why we also, going for walks around the Vexform area, like where we are standing now, so that we somehow start engaging more, and then find completely, different means of communicating that. So we are working on a publication as an organization. But I think, in a sense, we're talking about the story of the pigeon man. Well, actually, probably he would narrate also a story of these two weird people telling they come from the art school that came to talk to him, and they were very enthusiastic about his pigeons to his wife and his daughter, in a sense. And that's a story that, you know, doesn't really stay there, but that's a very, very valid story.
Yeah.
So these social dynamics that happen by just allowing ourselves to embrace the unexpected, that's what we think we should find means to cultivate more. Not force or educate people, as you said, to do it.
About being able to sort of perceive them with, as you like to call it, with a poetic justice.
Yeah.
And that's maybe even more artistic practice as well.
Yeah. On that note, I think it's time. Yeah, it's time to wrap it up. Since it's quite getting a bit late, we can continue, of course, have a bit of a beer and some snacks and so forth, and have more like personal encounters. Thank you all for being here. Like, we thank you all for being here. Thank Athenaeum again for like helping us in making this happen. Thank Ricarda.
Thank the ladies.
Thank Mariska thoroughly for like being with us. And
thank Remco for the camera work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's amazing.
And yeah, let's try for the upcoming events to also make this again like a more like, you know, productive and interesting, let's say, gathering, because I think we really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, me too.
in that again fluidity and instinctiveness of it. So thanks again. Clap to you guys.